Fort Lauderdale and its transformation over the past few years. I'm sure if you're old enough to remember, once upon a time, that Fort Lauderdale was much more recognized for being a ideal spring break destination for college kids and such. Um, it's where the kids often came to party. I mean, up until recently, I feel like they've really tried hard to sort of stave them off, much to the dismay of a lot of the local businesses, but that's a whole different story. Yes, once upon a time, it was referred to as the spring break capital of the world, but today the city is rewriting its story with luxury skyscrapers, global finance firms, Michelin-starred restaurants, and a booming cultural scene. Developers, investors, and even celebrity chefs are betting big on Fort Lauderdale, as shown right there with some of these city hall projects. And now when you look at the economic growth, I just saw an article from, I believe, WLRN, that their economic footprint in Florida has grown by 44% since 2019. So Fort Lauderdale, it is growing. There is a lot of stuff happening here. Larry, what has stood out to you the most when you think about Fort Lauderdale and its contributions to the greater South Florida community?
I saw the same article and I thought the same thing. I was like, that is substantial.
That's a lot.
Substantial. It makes sense to me. We've worked with a number of clients who like relocate to the area, and there's this draw to Fort Lauderdale for its proximity to Miami, yet not being in Miami, its proximity to multiple international airports. Its culture is different from Miami, different from West Palm. So there's like this middle ground. Its density of employers, right? And just businesses, big businesses, national and international businesses. So that's, and I think that's just scaled dramatically over the years, as like the article that we're referring to is mentioned. It's kind of like both West Palm gets headlines, Miami gets headlines. Fort Lauderdale, for some reason, feels like it doesn't get as many headlines for whatever reason. And so quietly, Fort Lauderdale has been just evolving, growing, and becoming a monster in every aspect of the community down here.
I mean, my God, the Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row. Now, granted, the arena's on, the westernmost side of the area, but I digress. It is still certainly an accomplishment.
So we got real sports teams in Fort Lauderdale, or at least one real sports team now.
Right.
And a year after year has been crushing it. Fort Lauderdale being the yachting capital of the world, arguably, right?
Yeah. No, that's the label. You can't take that away from them.
Yeah, you could argue that for sure. And then Port Everglades being one of the busiest cruise ports in the world. And so you have just like this mix of like a trifecta, or they were calling it the Golden Triangle, right?
Right.
So it's like the airport, the shipping port or the cruise port, and downtown, the downtown hub, right? Which is just creating huge economic impact in our area.
Well, and what stood out to me, earlier this year when I was getting some drone shots kind of on the north side of downtown was, it was all that construction going on, and not just, random buildings. I mean, very, very tall skyscrapers that stood out that you're like, wow, I had no idea this much activity was going on here. To your point, it has been under the radar through all this in a lot of ways. And I'm not sure why, but it just is.
And I still think there's like certain areas in Fort Lauderdale's downtown market that is still kind of undervalued on some level, right? Long term, it's undervalued, in my opinion, without question. There's certain like neighborhoods that haven't got the same value kick from like new construction that like we've seen in Del Rey or Boca Raton in their downtowns. Like if you compare some of these new construction homes that are selling for like 3 or 4 in downtown Fort Lauderdale area, or the East Fort Lauderdale area, and then to Boca or Del Rey, you'll see that like Fort Lauderdale's like the value play on some level, which is kind of interesting.
Is it guilt by association almost, like, because I feel like Broward kind of is like looked down upon to a certain extent versus well, I mean, I could be totally wrong. I'm just saying that's just what it feels like, versus Miami-Dade and Palm Beach County.
Some people love Broward, and then other people like don't love it. Like when we're talking to them about like, would you live here? Why don't you live here? Why do you live in Palm Beach County? Why do you live in Dade? And some people don't love it. I think it's for when you're talking about Palm Beach County versus Broward, it's like way more dense and there's just a lot more of everything happening. And so if you don't want that or value that or like it, you don't want to be there.
Way more happening in which one?
Like in Broward.
Okay.
Like it's just more dense. There's just more, there's just more of everything. There's more employers. Like if you go down the list of like employers in like South Palm Beach County versus Broward, Broward and especially Dade, it's like, it just seems like there's a lot more going on there. And you can see it. There's high rises. Fort Lauderdale is a bigger city than West Palm. Like that's what it is.
Oh yeah. Right? I mean, we may not have the same conversation 20 years from now and say that, but yeah.
100%. And absolutely. So one of the differences I think that you experience in Broward versus Palm Beach County is Broward is a little older with new stuff popping up in between all the older stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there's a very diverse culture there. And then Palm Beach County is a little newer, still has some old stuff, but feels a little newer, and with less old stuff kind of scattered through. So people who relocate from out of the area and are experiencing or used to experiencing like this homogenous feel, Palm Beach County sometimes gives you a little bit more of that versus Broward. Sometimes everybody that relocates to this area, especially when they're looking for like a new construction home for like $5 million, they're like, I'm buying this $5 million home. And then like 2 houses down, there's this like, $1.5 million dump. Right.
Right.
They can't appreciate that. They're not used to that. They're used to like clean, homogenous looking neighborhoods with all the same whatever. And South Florida in general just has a mix of that. And I think Palm Beach County has a little less of that, and Broward has a little bit more of that. And then because it's a city, this is what you get. You get it's an older, more developed city. And so I think that's the dichotomy there.
That makes sense. I mean, just right. Not everybody, planned communities weren't always around.
Yeah, especially in the East, which is why you see like planned communities out West, but you don't see them in the East because they're just way older. There used to be farmland in the West, and now they're huge GL communities.
Right. Well, yeah, that was my immediate thought.